James.
Hello, how's it going? Can everyone hear me?
Hello, how are you, bro?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Is James here?
I think
Yeah, hey
James.
everybody.
Yep,
Hey, bro.
there he is.
So yeah, welcome guys. It's the AMA. I'll give it to Shib and James, and they can do what they want to do. Thanks for coming.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for joining. It's been quite a while since I led one of these, so let's hope I'm not too rusty there. We're gonna start off with a brief network update, followed by a couple of announcements, and then on to the AMA. I'm thinking James and I will start answering the questions in the Slido, and then we will answer any questions in the chat, and we should be good to go. We're going to keep today concise and straightforward because I think most folks have already been sitting through Teacher Tuesday. So we'd like to kind of answer everyone's questions as well as we can, keeping it pretty fast. I think there's somebody whose mic is on. I'm not sure who it is.
Oh, yeah, the ones with the workout equipment. Yeah.
Cool.
He's
Awesome.
muted.
Yeah, thank you. Cool. First announcement. As everyone's aware, we've updated the BitTensor validators to version 1.2.0. This update includes a lot of security fixes, bug splashes, general improvements. But the most important aspect is the inclusion of the new BTLM model and the validation mechanism. As I'm sure everyone's aware, when we had one reward model, it was prone to attacks. It was very easy to sort of game it if somebody wanted to. And so the current reward stack aligns well with human conversations, but they sometimes perform poorly on hallucinations, like off-topic or incorrect statements. So we fine-tuned our BTLM model using direct preference optimization, which is now part of the reward stack. So this should help in mitigating these issues. And we'll be announcing as we go along in tuning this DPO and the validators and how it changes things in the reward landscape. Second one is actually fairly exciting. We are going to be an official sponsor of Hack MIT this year. So our very own Caro will be going to preach BitTensor, show people how to use it, distribute material, and really help students use BitTensor and their solutions to hackathon. So that's going to be a lot of fun. We're asking Caro for a lot of pictures if possible. And so it should go a long way for us to sort of reach that I want to say hungry machine learning audience as opposed to the people already sitting at the top who are already on top of the world. So this is going to be very interesting. Very excited to see what sort of interesting solutions come out of that and interesting applications there. Finally, this is a very long overdue update, but with me here is James, as everyone's aware, and I'd like to formally introduce him to the community. James comes to us from GSR. He has a classic investment banking background. He'll be joining us as head of growth at the OpenTensor Foundation and is going to be helping us with structuring, communications, and business development. James, do you want to take a few moments to introduce yourself there?
Yeah, thank you, Shib. And it's nice to formally, I guess, meet a lot of you here, although informally, we've been communicating, quite a bit over the last several months, whether it was at GSR and getting what we were doing over there over the line, or kind of getting started here, ramping up and leveraging a lot of you guys who are just so eager to help. And it made me realize, I realized this months ago when I found BitTensor, which was now 12 months ago, while I was at GSR. And it's just so different from every other project in the crypto industry, if you will, which is still such a tiny industry relative to the rest of the world, right? Like NVIDIA as a company is bigger than our entire industry. Like Ala and I are going to Singapore next month for Token 2049, and the whole crypto world is going there. It feels like a big deal, but at the end of the day, we're just operating in this tiny bubble. And so why did I leave this, push, you could call it, investment banking, finance background to come join what is very much out there on the risk curve? And it is because I truly believe, I believed this before I came, and my conviction has only deepened since meeting the team and seeing how, honestly, we have a team of superstars. Everyone here is like a 10xer. Like any person who works at the OpenTensor Foundation would be the best employee I'm confident at like any company I've worked at previously. And I believe that we have the potential to solve just so many problems that are wrong, both with the crypto industry, the machine intelligence, AI space, and everything that's going on there. And we're sitting at the heart of it. There's a lot to do, as we know, and we get amazing suggestions from you guys every day. We're working 24/7, 365, truly, to push all this over the line. And I'm someone who likes to operate as go, 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 right? And that's what we're going to do. But we're also relying on third parties here when we're trying to integrate anything, right? Like if it's something that seems simple on the surface, like, hey, the Tau token should be on Ledger. Of course it should be. We all agree. I agree. Allah agrees. Everyone wants it yesterday. But we're also reliant on them, and we have to adhere to their timelines. But rest assured, this will all get done. And I could ramble about it forever, and we'll talk more about how exactly we plan to do this, how to grow the network, how to introduce BitTensor to the world. Hack MIT is step one, right? Getting better intelligence on the network. Doing so will solve the problems that we have today. Doing so will solve this minor centralization concern, if you can call it that, right? But at the end of the day, it's just BitTensor, and I actually recommend you guys all go read this book. It's called A Hacker's Mind. I finished it last night. And every system in the world, whether it's software, whether it's the tax code, whether it's someone else's mind, like hacking someone at a cognitive level, everything's constantly getting hacked. And a system is only as powerful as the way it responds. And the way we respond is world class, right? Every attack makes us that much stronger. And I'm very confident that the next 12 to 24 months are going to be very important for us. It's going to be a hell of a journey. And I'm very much looking forward to working with all of you guys to make it a reality. So, Ala, I think we can dive into questions. Like we took questions just for the audience's context. I think you're probably aware, but we had a website up where you could input questions. So we'll answer those first to have some structure here, and then we will open it up to anything on top of what we talk about. And then we'll probably be good to go in about 20, 30 minutes here.
Yeah, nailed it. Made me excited. Nicely done.
Yeah. Well, that's part of the job. Okay. Let's start with hello. That's a very polite way to start a question. The project is building day by day. This is true. Where are we with subnetworks and the applications that are being built with subnets?
Cool. I could probably take this one. Now, as everyone's aware, the subnetworks are in the final stages of testing and development. We're looking to release as early as this coming September. At this point, we're sort of experimenting and working with the community members interested in specific subnetworks. The subnetwork use, like Arash a moment ago was giving a talk. Images, audio. I think Carol's also working on this part. And I think at this point, it's sort of in the final, like last mile stretch, really. We're just sort of kind of ironing out all the kinks, ironing out all the security bugs, and we sort of, in a way, have learned our lesson from Subnet 1, and we're trying to make sure that this release is significantly smoother than Subnet 1 as a result.
Exactly. Yeah, and I would add that the really cool thing about subnets is the value that is created, it's not additive. It's actually multiplicative, if I pronounce that correctly. And that is what excites me the most, right? Like the potential for growth here, like this is on par in my mind with Finney and the importance of this network and allowing, like we always say, yeah, BitTensor can eat everything. And we say it because we truly believe it. And this is a step towards actually making that a reality. So very exciting, and it lines up perfectly with Hack MIT. And Rob, who is one of the biggest cheerleaders you'll ever find, taking his talents to Cambridge to get people even more excited than we are. So on the topic of subnets, if all goes according to plan, how many do we think will be released by the end of the year, and when can we expect the next one?
Okay, so I think there's another mini question as part of the first question, which was, is the cabal still harmful? I'm going to answer that along with this question as well, to kind of wrap it up in that sense. If everything goes to plan and everything's perfect, I'm estimating that between 3 and 6 will be receiving emissions by end of year, and a bunch of others that might exist that do nothing really as the creators are still building them out. I'm a very conservative person. That's sort of my estimate. I could be totally wrong, and we can have maybe 50 subnets all vying for emissions and everything kind of good to go. But my gut feeling tells me, and this from what I've heard in the community as well, I've been chatting with quite a few folks, is that we'll most likely have a few bigger subnets that work well, as opposed to hundreds of tiny ones that do nothing, right? And I think, James, you touched on the centralization aspect a little briefly earlier, and I think part of the last question was about the centralization as well. And I think one thing we need to keep in mind here is that regardless of whether it is one entity or multiple entities, the idea of subnetworks is a sort of a solution to the centralization issue. If I don't like what's happened on a subnet, or it's been taken over by somebody, or it's doing terrible predictions, or it's working off terrible data, etc., I'm going to move away and I'm going to join a different subnet. And I can just do that by staking my tau to validators on another subnet, or moving my miners over, or just moving over my entire validator. And of course, this has a few kind of solid given benefits, things like decentralization increasing modalities. So we've been talking about modalities since really we launched back in November 2021. We want to support all these modalities and not just text, for example. And this really allows people to sort of create support for modalities over the network that don't exist today, and that maybe the foundation itself doesn't have the bandwidth to actually cover. And finally, it allows us to take one more step back from owning this protocol, right, and into owning a subnet instead. And this makes it so that the subnet creators are now responsible for tweaking validation properly and ensuring it runs smoothly. And of course, we're going to be available to help and provide support. But at the end of the day, the subnet creators have the responsibility of maintaining it. So because of all these details, it's sort of why I have a conservative estimate to have maybe a few very high functioning subnets as opposed to a bunch of ones doing whatever. And that's sort of what excites me the most. And then I want to see what people want to build. And of course, the foundation will be available to support everybody.
Yeah, it's spot on. And I think the last thing I'd add is that Subnet 1 is probably the most complex and difficult subnet that could possibly be built. And that's partly because English is inherently subjective. It's just so tough to measure what's good or what's bad. There are so many English teachers all over the world, and they all have different opinions. I got an A on one paper, and then another teacher gives it a D, and who knows? But with incentivizing storage or compute, that you can everyone agrees that an A100 is good, right? I think this is going to just take us to the next level, and so it's incredibly exciting.
Yeah, well said, James. It's a much more well-defined problem.
Okay, let's see. So we answered that. Mining being centralized, I think we've touched on that. There's a lot of miner centralization, which is valid, right? And so we are taking that all to heart. Okay.
How does centralization, is that the one you're on? IPs are still clustered?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So just to read it for everybody who's not on the FIDO, how does the team feel centralization of the miners has gone? IPs are still clustered. Decentralization is a rather unfortunate part of the journey, but this is something that often happens in most projects trying to take the direction we're trying to take. We often forget that BitTensor is only a year and 8 months old. And thus some centralization will always be part of the game until we get to a point where we have more people competing for tau that are more AI and mining savvy. And subnets is really our first step to tackling this issue, because it's going to enable people to migrate to other subnets if they deem a subnet's underperforming. Additionally, for example, the Hack MIT initiatives, moving forward to bring in more AI developers who are more savvy to kind of create more and more competition into the system so that this centralization sort of just becomes, for lack of a better word, a bygone era.
Exactly. Well said. And then we got a question about users having their TAOs stuck on their ledger and they're unable to get rewards, delegating rewards. Would it be possible to make this a priority? Yes. I mean, this is a priority. It takes time, like it just does. But we want to open the pipes in every way possible, whether that's Ledger, whether that's an alternative wallet. It will be both, but these things take time. We want to get this to a place where, like in 10 years, if we're building for something that's going to be massive in 10 years, then we need to do things today that are gonna allow for that. And I think that, and I'll discuss more like how I view the network in a few minutes, but at the end of the day, most people who are consuming the intelligence that is created on this network will never know what the Tau token is and should never know what the Tau token is. I mean, I don't care at all how TCP or IP works. All I care about is that it's great and that it allows me to be on this call now. It allows me to watch Netflix, do whatever the hell I want. And so that's the goal, right? Like people won't know what it is. You guys, as early adopters, will, and you will likely be rewarded for your vision. But yes, we do want to make this a priority. That makes me feel bad. I want people to get delegating rewards because they're cool.
As he said.
Okay. Some constructive criticism from Professor Khan that miner prompts are too often repetitive. Shiv, do you have any thoughts?
I'm not quite aware of this exact criticism, but we're very open to hearing any inputs and any criticisms he has. So I'd love for him to reach out to me, even me directly. The prompts themselves are designed to push for diversity and quality of responses. As everyone's aware, previously we had a single rewards model, and that single model is going to have a lot of exploits that can be taken advantage of, and that's why now we're using a stack. That aligns well with human preference, and it's basically what the previous models did best. Though, as I mentioned, we did notice that they performed poorly in hallucinations and off-topic incorrect statements. So BTLM's point is to push models further. So if there is some minor prompts that are repetitive, that should be punished, right? There shouldn't be, for example, a method for somebody to repeat something and get back some reward for it, or try to, basically have the validators be under-optimizing the way that they prompt the miners as well. So, to be honest with you, I'm not aware of that criticism, but if Professor Khan can reach out to me directly, I'd love to have that conversation and see what's up there.
Yep, agree. We want to be as open as possible. Any criticism, is so encouraged. Please, we want to hear every single piece of it so that we can build it into the system and make sure that we're bulletproof. Next, we have a question about the Exodia exploit. Can it be fixed for any form, which we'll assume we mean modality? And on top of that, the validation of responses by validators looks sometimes to be broken. How can you fix that?
Okay. As you said, James, I'm going to try to answer it, assuming they mean modality here. The answer is yes. They can be fixed for any modality, provided that the data set that is used for validation is large enough. That's a big ask. And your validation method enforces uniqueness as well. I'm not sure what you mean by validator responses look broken, but we are continuously improving on it by adding new reward models and enforcing stricter and stricter parameters to make sure that real useful models are earning miners. Now, having said that, the core of the Exodia exploit is that somebody can train a model against a validator's reward stack and basically thus create a model that is always going to perform well because it's trained to know what that validator is expecting. Now that's something that, to be completely honest with everybody, that's something that all subnets are going to have to learn to deal with. But there is a different way of looking at it. If your validator's reward mechanism is correctly aligned with what the subnet's trying to achieve, then people training the models against the reward mechanism might not necessarily be a bad thing, because it will actually still push further your consensus, your setup of that subnet. So for example, if you have, say, a financial prediction subnet and your validation rewards use a big financial data set to validate miners, if somebody trains a model against your reward models, they're actually creating something that's going to adhere to the rules that you've created. So you're making your subnet better in the long run. Of course, the caveat here is that you need lots of data to achieve this balance, and you're actually creating an issue if you don't have enough balance, because then if you have too little data, then people are going to be able to attack the system and exploit it as a result.
Very well said. Okay. Man, we have a lot of Professor Khan fans in the house.
Yeah, I'd love to chat with
another.
him. Got good questions.
Yeah, and he has a big fan club. So apparently, he said that our consensus model code needs to be improved and that model weights are lost in deregistration, which hampers progress. Any thoughts?
That I don't quite understand, because if a model's kicked out of the system, then it's already performing badly. It's not really benefiting the system in any way. So I'm not sure what progress is being hampered here if a model is lost in deregistration. Apologies. Now in today's subnet 1, models are running in inference mode, so their weights are kept to the model and kind of not relied upon by others in the network. If a model is deregistered, then it's just not doing as well as its peers. So the validators are not putting it again for information after that. Again, if anybody has a contact to Professor Khan, I'd love to chat with him and basically hear more about his concerns and kind of see if there's room for, there's obviously a lot of room for improvement on our side, but if there's room for us to collaborate on improvement or see what we can do from our end to help with his concerns.
Yeah, we should definitely talk to him. I was looking at his Twitter right before this, and he looks to be building some very cool things. So I'll ping him after this, and we can hop on the phone with him.
That's great.
If a bad validator or rogue individual or group starts using the network for nefarious purposes, yeah, we don't like that. What are the various ways they could be stopped? Who could stop them and how? And this person mentions CP, bioweapons, terrorism.
So this is a bit of a double-edged sword. If a bad validator starts using the network for nefarious purposes, like say using this sort of data sets, then miners have the option of blacklisting that validator to avoid data spreading to their models. Or if a bad validator is not in consensus with the other validators on the network because they're using a different data set. So for example, all the validators on the network are using, say, a Red Pajama data set, and this person's coming in and they're mixing in weird stuff into their data set, or they're trying to basically use a completely new data set that has terrible things in it, then they're going to be risking being deregistered from the network because they're not following UMA consensus with the other validators. So their trust will go down and eventually they will get kicked out. Now, of course, this is something that we are continuously looking into. So for example, this is why miners all have the not safe for work filter implemented in them already. So any not safe for work data will not pass through the miners anyways, then goes to the validators. However, this is still something that needs to be investigated further to make sure we don't run into this problem.
Agree. Yeah, and I think you said it really well with falling out of consensus. And one very, albeit simple, example would be, say hypothetically there are 2 validators in the network, only 2, and they advertise themselves. One is like, altruistic, I want to create beautiful things for humanity. And then the other validator is advertising itself as, I want to fund terrorism, I want to blow this up. If you think that, and this is why I believe that we have the answer to the alignment problem via UMA consensus, is 51% of stake. Well, almost certain. I believe in humans. I think most of us are very good people. 51% of stake will go to altruism. Although, a side tangent, effective altruism has gotten a horrible name after SBF, but we could talk about that later. But I think that, yeah, look, like this is something that is top of mind for us. We do not want to be known as a network that promotes anything like what you mentioned. And so we're constantly looking into it, and rest assured we are on top of it. Okay. If an entity feels there is too much censorship or lack of freedom, how would they go about changing that? Wow, lack of freedom. How would they feel at OpenAI? but Ala, what do you think?
So this is sort of where there's no kind of silver bullet answer here. And any answer that I'm going to give to this question or the previous one, there's always going to be something that will have some sort of exception or some sort of some sort of group of people who will not be happy with it. Eventually, it goes down to the fact that once we are fully decentralized, wherein the foundation doesn't really own the system anymore, we no longer have full control over it. It becomes easier for us to set our own set of ethos and say, okay, on our side, for example, our subnet, this is not okay, right? If an entity feels like there's too much censorship, they may want to create their own subnet, and they might have their governance over that in that time, right? Of course, they're also going to need validators and miners with lots of tau to generate meaningful emissions. But I think the next question that might flow from this is, what if somebody with bad intentions wants to create a subnetwork and there's no turn around it? This is always going to be a risk because they can. There's nothing we can do about that. But they will need to have validators with lots of tau, basically, to actually make real emissions more than others. And it can get far too costly and expensive to be influential as a subnet, more so than everyone else, if nobody believes in what you are doing, or that everyone believes what you are doing is wrong. Because there's all sorts of kind of stopgaps to sort of add it to sort of try to prevent this sort of thing from happening. For example, blacklisting mechanisms, the ability to choose to move your tau away from subnets, and for validators to decide not to give emissions to subnets, and so on, to basically make it so that we as a collective can think together and can kind of tackle these issues in a sense. But of course, we also don't want to say, this is, we own this entire protocol ourselves. You can never do anything that you want to do. We have a very specific set of rules, OpenAI style, and you can't do anything about that either. So straddling that line is extremely difficult, and admittedly, this is something we are still continuously working on.
I agree. It's a very fine line, but at the end of the day, we're just trying to create a free market where, as you said, Ala, people stake to what they want, people incentivize what they want, and at this very early stage, like loud people will say loud things if they don't like where the free market is taking them, and that's something we just have to live with, deal with, and we're very much thinking about this deeply. Next is interesting thoughts regarding the dangers of AGI. Is BitTensor a weapon of mass destruction in the making that cannot be stopped later on? Are we all screwed?
Talking.
Ala?
We are all screwed. I agree. No, it's worth noting that this problem is not unique to BitTensor or decentralized. Whoop, there's somebody speaking here? Whoop, just one moment here.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Okay, I think we're okay. As I was saying, it's actually worth noting that this isn't a problem that's unique to BitTensor or decentralized neural nets or Web3. Many technologies, from the internet to blockchain to AGI, they come with both promises and potential perils, right? Responsible development, governance, and vigilance by our community are really important to ensure that these technologies are used for all of our benefit. So I think, generally speaking, AGI is a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it would be the holy grail of humanity to give birth to AGI. But on the other hand, there are many companies trying to achieve this today. We're all aware of the Googles and the Metas of the world that are trying to go after this, and they're fancy, super well-funded private labs. The problem becomes this, right? Should AGI be created by a centralized entity with a monetary bottom line, like Google, Meta, and etc., or should it be created with as little bias as possible and not controlled by a single entity, right? Obviously, we at the OpenTensor Foundation want to do the latter. We believe latter is a better approach. Of course, it still has its own perils, right? With as little bias as possible is a great promise, but there's always going to be bias because we are all human. right? And at the same time, any AI created on BitTensor is designed to be aligned with BitTensor's incentive mechanism, right? Now somebody might come back and say, okay, well, how are we different, right? Like BitTensor's got an incentive mechanism, we have to align by that, so you're kind of biasing it towards that. The difference here is that we are open source. Open source code is basically where the secret sauce is, really. It's basically because an open source base, anyone can contribute to it. Anyone can see what's under the hood, and anyone can actually, amend changes or propose changes as a result, right? So it's compared to the closed source approach, a coercion stake, which we don't know, right? I don't know how anything really works at, say, Google search. So I think that having said all of this, if there are ethicists in the crowd, I'd love to have a chat with them and we can tackle these problems together and kind of have an open discussion about it. Because we are just starting to poke our heads out of the bushes at this point and sort of trying to market ourselves to the world and come out to the world, this is a question that was always going to be something we have to discuss, and this is something that we will always have to have in mind to sort of as we build further, right? We have to maintain this open source ethos most importantly, and we also have to maintain this idea that we work together to accomplish this free market incentive that we are trying to create.
Exactly. And the key word there is we. Yuma Consensus aligns all of us based on our desires, based on the Tao that we hold. And this to me is just so much superior than leaving it in the hands of Altman or any of these guys. And even if you argued, well, Altman is such a good person today, I would say, I don't care, right? Like power corrupts. Like history has shown that power corrupts. I wouldn't even trust myself with the keys to the kingdom. And I watched this guy, Sam, the other day in an interview, and the woman asked him directly, why should the world trust you? And you could just see it in his body language that he was so uncomfortable, that he knows he's up to no good. I mean, I don't know how people trust him, but that's why we're all here. And one saying, if you will, that I really like and is very inspiring to me, especially in this context, is when 99% of the world disagrees with you, then like we all here are either gravely wrong or we're about to make history. And given that we're on the phone, I think we think the latter, and that's what we're going to do. And I was listening to Ben Horowitz the other day as well, and he was saying that, there were moments in time where the internet could have been closed, where Bill Gates was trying to create like the information superhighway, and AOL was trying to do their thing, but it was the work of a few people who built, like Tim Berners-Lee and all these guys, who built the internet as we know it, who allowed for the flourishing, the economic productivity that has taken place over the last 2 decades, because of like Pareto distribution, like the work of a small group of people. And the phone could have been open, but Apple closed it. So like nothing here is guaranteed. That's why like we have to come and work every single day and try to make it a reality. But it's super important. Clearly we're a little too passionate about it, but that's okay. That's why we are here. But no, definitely, this is a concern. We do want to think about it. Any ethicist, we'd love to speak with you.
I think just to add a little more to what you were saying, James, just the fact that Sam Altman is trying to close the door behind him just after creating one of the, biggest changes in AI at this point in time is really plenty of reason to not really trust this person. You know what I mean? The fact that, he's just like, we need to regulate all these smaller AI people because they can create general AI, but he's the one who's closest to doing that, right? OpenAI is, Google is, Meta is. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I would say that just reading MIT Technology Review did a really good piece on him and the launch of WorldCoin, and just how exploitative it's been by going just directly after third world country citizens who desperately need $40 and don't care about WorldCoin, don't care about anything other than finding their next meal. It just honestly makes me sick. It shows the type of person he is. Like, that alone is his character in my eyes. And that alone is also, in many ways, like a very good descriptor of the crypto industry as a whole. It's people who are pre-mining their launch, people who are trying to enrich themselves. It's disgusting. They're using the blockchain. They're trying to slap it on a problem. They're trying to manufacture a problem. I mean, it's so wrong, and that's why BitTenzer really spoke to me. And I felt, after discovering Bitcoin in 2015, I always had this feeling, like, in my gut, that someone somewhere would come along. It turned out to be Jake and Alla. They were building it. They would come along, take Bitcoin's beautiful mechanism, right? Like telling miners from all over the world, go find compute. But, essentially, once you find the compute, you close your eyes and hope that you win the hash lottery. With BitTenzer, we're taking it a step further and really turn it into this just very useful network that, if we execute, I think can also solve for interoperability, which is a massive problem. You see all these VCs piling into these startups that are mostly just vaporware. And like you hop on the phone with them and you don't even know how you could begin to integrate, because there's like, it's inefficient, and we need one network. Only a few tokens are likely to survive, in my view of the world, of where this is going. Yeah, I'll stop there. I'll stop the ramble. But definitely,
Just one more thing that you sort of reminded me of, James. I think we can close it here and continue with the questions. There was an experiment somebody did in New York City a while ago when they attached Wi-Fi routers to homeless people in the name of trying to spread free Wi-Fi all over New York. And it's that experiment was so out of touch with reality and what people need in the name of innovation, in the name of like changing things up and changing the status quo and disruption. It's crazy that it mirrors exactly what Sam Altman did. You know what I mean? And it just like, it rings so hollow compared to all the things that people are doing nowadays.
Agree. Yeah, and to tie a bow on it, like, people have approached us, like very real people, and said, you guys are almost too good, like too morally good, right? Like you didn't pre-mine anything. Like you're a participant in this market like everyone else. You don't have like much of an advantage from a capital perspective. And that's because we're going to do it the right way. If it makes it a little more challenging, who cares? Like, if you do things the right way, you will be rewarded, and that's what we're going to do. Next would be, what is the incentive to deploy a model on top of the time series network? If I have a model that beats the market, why would I share it?
I think Arash answered this already on his side, if I'm not mistaken, but happy to provide more light on this. Basically, one of the incentives that, at least from my point of view on this question, is in addition to the profits you get from your model when you run it for your purposes, you're also earning tau on that time series subnet, right? As your model performs on the network and beats your competitors. Now, no model is going to beat the market every single time. I don't think such a model exists or will exist. But in addition to earning tau by deploying a model, you can actually take advantage of that subnet itself and query it yourself for market predictions as well, taking advantage of your peers too at the same time.
Very, very well said. Next is, does the team have a game plan for future pressures from regulators about the tau token? Thanks. You're welcome. Ala, do you want to say anything? This is another.
Yeah.
I guess I'll lead it quickly, if you don't mind, by saying,
go for it.
When I was at GSR, we would work with foundations of all shapes and sizes, and they would always want to talk to us, until I tried to talk to Ala. He was like, no, fuck that guy. And that is because the Open Tensor Foundation has taken the most responsible approach to the token that it's setting the industry standard. I really think there's going to be like a Harvard Business School case study on how we've handled this and how we will continue to handle this by, I mean, Ali, you can give the history, but no interacting with market makers, no interacting with anything. It's all community led. It's beautiful.
Yeah. You kind of nailed it there.
We're positioned quite well.
I think that just to kind of add a little more color to what you're saying, James, the game plan has been in motion since we started the project. In that we don't participate in market listings, we don't speculate on TAL prices, we don't do anything that typical crypto projects might do, like airdrops and etc. And so we do have a legal team that's been helping us navigate this regulatory landscape and keep our facts clean and straight. Actually, a couple of them are actually ex-SEC guys, so they know the landscape pretty well. And this sort of puts us down in a good position to navigate it from that end. But because of an ongoing effort and due to the regulatory landscape today in AI and crypto, this sort of puts us down as the underdog of both industries. And when we come out, it's going to be massive. It's going to be great. But we want to make sure that we are positioned well to not shoot ourselves in the foot when it comes to regulation. So rest assured, we've been on it since day one. I think a lot of the miners in this call who are, have been with us since day one know that we've been on this since day one and we've been very careful in how we tread, legally speaking.
Exactly. Does it slow things down in the short term? Sure. But does it maximize our odds of long-term prosperity? Most certainly. And that's why we're not gonna change the stance, because we live in a world where the SEC is completely irrational. And when you deal with an irrational actor, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that we have legal opinions saying token is a commodity, because there is a world that exists where Gensler slaps everything other than Bitcoin as a security, and we don't want to be caught up in any of that. Next is, what factors will increase BitTensor's total intelligence the most? How do you see the system's intelligence increasing moving forward?
So it's a bit of a hard question to answer. What do you define as total intelligence, right? Like, do you mean subnet 1? Do you mean intelligence across the board, horizontally in all modalities, or intelligence vertically across one modality? It really just depends, right? All these different factors will change things. So, for example, if we're looking at subnet 1, right? Let's kind of tackle the one that we know today. How do we increase that total intelligence today? There's quite a few factors that we already judge miners by, things like output quality, things like diversity, and things like we're actually looking further into the reward model and seeing that can be also a reward of a mark of intelligence. I think we just released a tweet a second ago about how well the network's performing lately and the total overall performance of the network. And to be completely frank with you, we are still creating these metrics as we go. We are going to be releasing more dashboards to the community to see the total increase of diversity and output quality of the system over time. And stay tuned for that one. If you look at, for example, the horizontal side of the equation, right? If we add, say, images, video, audio, and so on and so on and so on, what factors are going to increase those? And that really boils down to their development, right? Somebody has to create for example, the audio subnet, and that somebody has to be good at what they do. They can't just be a regular audio subnet. So it's almost like, I think the best answer to this question is going to be engagement from the AI community and engagement from people interested in deploying something on the network that is new and interesting, and that's actually a full-on application. So one of the things that we're doing today actually is we're hiring for a developer relations person, right? I'm sure everyone in this call, if they've been with us for long enough, they're aware that we used to have one, but we don't want that person. Actually, Matt Hamilton was more on the crypto end of things, right? We're looking for somebody more on the AI end of things. We want to bring in the AI talent. Those are the people we want to bring on. Those are the people we want to onboard. And those are the people that are really going to grow the system and create the supply that people are looking for. And so as more of those people join in, the more interesting subnets are going to start developing. And that's another factor of BitTensor's intelligence measure that we can actually use. So I know that was a kind of somewhat a vague answer, but we are coming up with more specific metrics towards each subnet, and we'll be releasing that in the coming days. But for now, I think our biggest focus is really on the talent that is developing on the system.
I agree. I think you hit the nail on the head. And to me, one of the most interesting things about the network is my intuition would have been, okay, build this subnet one, incentivize text output completion, and you're going to get all of these PhDs, AI folks running to the network. But in reality, that's not the case. And I think that this is because those people have more to lose than like the 20-year-old gamer type who finds BitTensor somehow, realizes that, wow, this network is just starting. It's in the first inning and I can go be like a major player on it today. It's the same like early Bitcoin. I mean, Satoshi for a year mined the network himself. Imagine like if that had happened here, because crypto is so different today than it was 10 years ago. Now, like if we were to launch a new chain, like this guy, Fam, is that his name? Who's trying to launch a fork, which is very flattering. Imitation is the best form of flattery. So good luck to him. But people would have been pissed. They would have been like, Bitcoin is so centralized. What a piece of, you know what? This is the nature of being early. And when you have a few groups, I think it's like 8 groups we've identified at the moment. When you have 8 groups, how do you make it more difficult for them? Like you said, Ala, you just increase the talent. That's why we're going to be at Hack MIT. That's why we're hiring an AI DevRel person. And that is the focus. Increase mining talent. And I think that leads quite well into the next question, which is, what steps will you be taking to let people know about BitTensor? Not much building will be happening if nobody knows about it and how it works. That's right. And that's why I really wanted to come here and take this role on, because I had the exact same feeling. As someone who, at a very high level, understands the importance for this technology in the world, but as also someone who's not like technical, very technical by nature, I thought that this was like a very interesting void to be filled. And I think of the network right now in sort of 4 layers, if you will, where layer 1 is your builders, like your miners, the people that we were just talking about. Those are the ones who are creating the intelligence. That's why we're going to Hack MIT. The miners create the intelligence, which the validators on layer 2 are building on top of, providing API access to enterprise and others, which is your 3rd layer. I'm calling it enterprise, where the enterprise plugs in to a validator's API, consumes the intelligence or any other digital commodity to create applications, to improve internal operations. Whatever it is they're going to do with the intelligence, we don't really care, but they will use it because it's better and because it's cheaper. And that is quite simply where we are headed. We're living in a world right now where OpenAI is trying to raise $100 billion, or else they risk going out of business or filing for bankruptcy by the end of 2024. That's the latest I've read. And it makes sense, because how are you going to pay for all this compute? Not just to train the models, but inferencing as well. So enterprise is your 3rd layer. And then the 4th layer is the end consumer. It's me. It's all of us on this call who are going to have our lives changed and improved by BitTensor without even knowing, right? Oh, Starbucks created a new app that uses AI. It's probably plugged into BitTensor because BitTensor is better. But the person, the line out the door at Starbucks, which is always both funny and pathetic when you're at an airport, and Starbucks, of all places, has like the biggest line, and you realize that America has a crippling caffeine addiction. But anyway, all those people will be on BitTensor one day, and they won't know it. And that's the best part. So yes, we're working very closely with the community here to pull every lever to act on all four of those. But you can't have a good layer 2 if you don't have a good layer 1. So we're focusing right now on going to college campuses and spreading the good word. And all of you as well. Like when you guys reach out, it's the most amazing thing ever. At first, like my first day here 6 weeks ago, I walked in and I was like, man, I'm the only person on the BD team. That's a bit scary. But then I realized that all of you guys are so passionate and so incredible and so smart. And like you have a wealth of experience that none of us have here. But if we stitch it all together, then we're just going to become so incredibly powerful, and we can act on everything we've been talking about today. So yeah, like the world will know that that's going to happen, but it takes time, right? And like we should also discuss and acknowledge that there are benefits to being under the radar still. Like for one, it's incredible that we've gone from 0 to whatever we're trading at today, 300 million. And like over $1 billion or roughly $1 billion on a fully diluted basis is nuts with no marketing. It means we have a green field. But yes, this is the plan. And then the next question is currently the future or expanding investor is paying the network by buying the TAO from validators and miners. How will this change in the future? Well, every token that exists can be tied directly to a piece of intelligence that was mined and validated by the validators. It's another beautiful thing. Again, no pre-mine. So by definition, an investor will always be purchasing a token that can be tied to work of a miner. So nothing can really change. Nothing has ever changed. Whether you buy TAO from, second hand, third hand, fourth hand, like at the end of the day, you can trace it back to intelligence. And the way I think about our valuation, when I do think about it, is right now the market is saying that this web of intelligence, both what it is today and the potential it has tomorrow, is worth $300 million. When I look at what others are raising, when I look at the entire AI landscape, it to me feels like we can, it's a decent valuation. But who knows? Anyway, the network is intelligence. So right now we have $300 million worth of intelligence on the network. And in terms of liquidity, yeah, for sure. I mean, it's very liquid, which means it's very inefficient. And it's a point of emphasis for us to work with the community. Again, we can't do anything, but we can encourage the community to act when there's potential to get another listing, or we're trying to potentially partner with some bridge solutions. Who knows? Like it's all early days there, but it's a priority. And in my opinion, the liquidity effort and the developer effort go hand in hand, right? Because if you're going to bring these miners on and they're selling into a market and every sale is tanking the price, that's going to piss people off. And if you piss people off, they're very unlikely to ever come back, right? Like you can only come out once, as they say. So we hear you there. And that's it. Wow. 54 minutes flew by because we were having so much fun.
Hit the nail on the head there.
Do you guys have any other questions? Did we do a bad job answering any of them?
Please do tell.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, no, you guys did good, man. I'll check if anyone's asked any questions. 1 second. It doesn't seem like there's any extra questions from anyone. If anyone on the voice chat wants to unmute and ask anything, please go ahead.
Else, if you think of anything later, or if you rewatch this recording, please don't hesitate to message James and I directly, and we're more than happy to help out.
Yeah, ditto to that. Like, please. My Twitter DMs are open. Discord. What else? What other social media is there? Telegram.
Snail mail, if that's your thing, it's totally fine.
Yeah, snail mail. You can fax me stuff. I mean, do your thing. But yeah, we really want to hear from you all the time. It's important. Our community is the most valuable thing. I think many projects would pay a lot of money to have a community as strong as we have, and we never take it for granted.
Someone asked, how does miner rewards increase in eco performance?
So this question is actually a little technical. Now, miner rewards increasing means that the validator stack that we have today, the reward model stack that we have, has actually determined that this is deserving of a higher reward as a result. Now, according to our testing, and we've tested this extensively, if the outputs from the miners look okay, as well as the rewards increasing, this typically just means that the performance has increased on the network generally. Now, of course, take this with a grain of salt, because this is the very first time we actually dig into this. And this is our first time actually starting to report rewards. So we will have more and more details for you as we go. James, you and I think can probably put together a nice little blog post or something for people to go through to understand just how these rewards increasing, basically this new metric that we're creating, this new rewards increasing equals performance.
That sounds good.
Yeah, it seems like that's the only question. Oh wait, he's typing again. Oh no, he said thank you. Yeah, I think that's the only question. So
thank you.
Yeah, I think we can wrap up here. Yeah, that was a good talk. I appreciate you guys coming down today.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely looking forward to doing this again, and we'll definitely start reaching a little bit more. And we are aware that some people might have some reservations about reaching us directly. Please just do it. We are very open to chatting. We're very open to all your suggestions, and we want to hear from you. So yeah, and as always, be careful of scammers. There's quite a few folks spinning videos now.
For sure. Well, yeah, James, it was nice. It was nice meeting you too. I think you're a great addition to the team. So, but yeah.
Thank you, Juan. Thanks for putting this on. This is great. And like Ala said, we look forward to doing it again soon.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that wraps up then, guys. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Juan, for moderating. I know it's pretty late on your end. Go to bed.
No problem. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.